Advertising has us chasing cars and clothes, working jobs we hate so we can buy shit we don't need.
Hey everyone, it's Igor and Ryan here for Project Uproar, helping you get closer to your ideal self every day, along with us, which we're trying to do as well. And so today we thought it would be really cool to talk about journaling. Journaling is something that I've done on and off for 10 years. I actually have my first journal I ever got with my first ever journal entry from 2010. So I've been doing it on and off, but it's really last year that I started doing it more consistently. And I've pretty much for a year now been journaling. For the last while, I always do a daily routine that I'm gonna explain to you guys what it's about. And Ryan's been doing it at least for over 2 months, and he didn't do it in the past, so he has even more pronounced views on how different it is doing it and not doing it, and what changes he's seen in himself. So we're gonna be going over that, how we got into journaling, why we were interested in it. We're going to be going into the benefits that we've seen in it, and we're also going to be just talking to you on whatever we can think of in regards to journaling.
For sure. So for myself, I got into journaling as a way to start writing more consistently. So for me, it wasn't about reflecting on my day. It was this activity I was doing just to say that I was writing every day. So Mark Edmondson, who wrote the book Why Write, talks about how if you want to start getting into writing, one of the easiest things you could do is just write about yourself. So write about your past, write about your present, difficulties you're having, because it's an excuse to write and you'll never run out of things to talk about. Journaling became a way for me to write every day and practice the art of writing. After that, I soon realized that journaling started to become something that was therapeutic. Getting my thoughts onto paper helped alleviate certain stresses in my mind. Even though I wasn't writing for a particular audience, it helped me to see some of my problems out on paper, which in turn helped alleviate some of my worries.
Yeah, so I find that that's a huge benefit you get with journaling. Tim Ferriss talks about it. Unless you write some stuff down, they will ricochet around in your skull like a bullet. That's his analogy. And I find that's the case. If I look at my own journal I started writing with horrible grammar writing and everything 10 years ago, it was the first thing that drew me to actually start writing was a negative experience. So I had a tough day at school. There was some bullying. And so I was mad, and I actually went down to start writing. And that's when it actually helped me out huge. I was really upset before I started writing. Then I started writing. After it, I felt good about the situation. I felt it's totally manageable. I noticed that whenever difficult experiences happen in life, whether it's a breakup or whether it's a death in the family or something like that, or if you're just frustrated or mad at someone, it really helps to just get those feelings down on paper, and you almost kind of get it out of yourself. It's a way of cleansing yourself, and then it's down on the paper, and you feel a lot better. It's crazy. It's almost like exercise for the mind. It's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And what I ended up doing after just using journaling to get out some of my worries, my journal then became a place for me to also map out my day. So I started to notice how my journal took on a bit of a form. The first bit became a place for me to talk about what was worrying me. And then the second half of the page, I started to kind of map out my day. So tell myself what I had to accomplish, what I had to do. And that also helped alleviate stress because it clarified my day, which is great because what it allows you to do is already know what your goals are for the day instead of going about your day kind of ambiguously, not knowing what to do from task to task. It gave me a clear purpose for each day, which really helped alleviate some of that worry.
And that's the thing, you don't have to follow your schedule perfectly. But once you write down a schedule, and I've tried this recently as well, all of a sudden, if you're in doubt, let's say you have those hours where you don't know what to do and you find yourself on YouTube watching videos you don't really need to watch, or on Instagram just scrolling through, you can go back to that and be okay, this is the stuff I want to work on today. So I can do more of this, for example. So you fill it with stuff you really want to do that's going to be meaningful for you. So obviously, if something pops up, you don't need to follow it perfectly, but it's just so you're not wasting time, right? That's a really great thing. And the other thing we wanted to talk about was also the idea of gratitude journaling. So whenever I write in a journal now, every day I start with at least one thing I'm grateful for. Often I do more. And I've been doing this now for like every day for months. Like I'm not even sure how long, but I remember telling Ryan when I started. And it's a great way to actually reframe your mind at any point in the day, at least once a day, right? And you actually think about this stuff because Marcus Aurelius said something along the lines of, we are our thoughts, right? So we view the world in specific ways, and that worldview in many ways becomes our reality. So by actually forcing ourselves to focus on gratitude, find something to be grateful for, we're actually training our minds to focus on the positive, and then we become a positive, happier person, and we develop that skill to actually identify positive things. And once we do that, whether it was like a beautiful walk in nature, or whether it was just something nice someone did for you, maybe even a stranger you met, you had a really good conversation, whatever it is, you write it down, and all of a sudden it's not just during that isolated period of time where you're noticing good stuff happening. Throughout the day, you're going to be like, oh, what's positive about this situation? You're just going to be much more likely to notice the positive, and as a result, you'll be a happier person.
Yeah, and the great thing about gratitude journaling is you'll never run out of things to talk about. So it could be something as simple as you're grateful to have woken up this morning because there's so many people around the world who don't get that opportunity. Or you're grateful that you live in a society like we do today, where we don't have to necessarily worry about our safety every single second. We're able to possibly pursue those passions that we want to pursue. So the great thing about gratitude journaling is even if it becomes repetitive, you notice you're grateful about the same thing, it still has similar effects on your mind.
And another thing I want to point out is a Stoic practice, where you had a lot of Stoics who would ask themselves these 3 questions every day and answer them. And I find in the afternoon, going to my journal and answering them improved my life perhaps more than anything else. So the questions are, what did I do right today? What did I do wrong today? And what's left undone? AKA, how can I improve for the future? What's left for me to improve? So right would be anything that would be a positive thing that where you acted with virtue, i.e. when you were like, let's say, courageous, when you were disciplined, when you acted nicely to someone and you treated them with justice, or when you did something like good for your wisdom, right? Those are the 4 virtues. And for me, it's often like around courage and discipline. Those are the ones I often focus on. And if I actually know, I'm going to ask myself later on in the day about what good thing did I do, then I will be more likely to seek out opportunities to do those things. Then the same works for what did I do wrong today? So that's when you acted without virtue. Let's say you chickened out of doing something you should have done, or you didn't have the discipline, so you procrastinated and you didn't have the discipline to do something you know you wanted to do. You're going to be much less likely to do that stuff once you actually know you're going to be held accountable for it. And I've noticed that, yes, I still sometimes slip, right? Like we're all human. Me and Ryan definitely make mistakes, as did even like the great Stoics we still read today, like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca. But the idea is that your mistakes become much less of a big deal. Like, let's say it's not going to be a blow up. It's going to be like, oh, I don't like the way I treated this person. I could have been nicer to them, right? It's going to be those kinds of changes. And over time, you'll still find stuff wrong because no one's perfect that you did every day. But it's not coming from a place where you're like beating yourself up. It's like, okay, no, how can I improve? That comes in the 3rd question. And it's a very simple way of seeing, okay, so I made this mistake. I'm aware of it. Now, how can I improve? So it could be, developing my courage muscles, developing my discipline. I could go about ways that I could make sure I do it. For example, I'm not allowed to do anything else until I do this one thing. Let's say for me, it could be writing. So then I do it and then I don't procrastinate. So it's really a thing that holds you accountable each day and keeps you from slipping. But if we're on autopilot, we can go days, weeks, months. It becomes a negative spiral where we don't examine ourselves and we end up slipping. This way, if you start slipping even a bit, you'll catch yourself every day. And I believe it was Socrates says the unexamined life is not worth living. Journaling forces us to examine our lives on a daily basis. And that way we can really construct our best possible lives, which are different for each person. But think about it. If you're actually conscious, if you're picking your day, if you're noticing where you went wrong, really, really soon, and I've noticed this, the quality of my problems has drastically improved. So when before I might have gotten into like this big argument with my brother, for example, now it's like, oh, I could have been nicer, but like it's still not to that extent where I blew up or something like that. So your problems will definitely get much more manageable and you'll start to see the progress because you're writing it down. And then all of a sudden you get that positive motivation and you're going to keep going.
Yeah, and I think what's important with what we're saying is that there's not just one way of journaling. So you could use some of the practices we're talking about. So, for example, I sometimes use those few practices Igor just mentioned. I don't use them every day, and that's okay because it works for me. You don't have to necessarily journal for one full page. You could journal for as long or as short as you'd like. I know a practice that I use that I think Igor doesn't use. Every morning, I write down a few things that may go wrong in my day. So, being a teacher, I anticipate possible situations that may happen in the classroom that could cause me stress. And what I do is I write them down and I tell myself, what am I going to do in these situations if these arise? So I perhaps come up with certain phrases I may tell myself to get myself to calm down, or I tell myself that I'll focus more on my breath during those moments in order to alleviate some of the worry. So again, you don't have to use all these practices. You can pick and choose what works for you. The point is just to try to make journaling part of your routine in some way because it has great psychological benefits, which could improve you for a long time.
Definitely. And although Ryan pointed out that he uses negative visualization every day, I don't use it every day, but sometimes I read to remind myself, like, yeah, that Marcus Aurelius quote that you will meet people who you treat you poorly, who don't know how to act justly. Like that, I read, but I don't necessarily write. But when it comes to something that's really bothering me, like let's say just recently we had some false copyright strikes on our YouTube channel, Anime Uproar. And that's kind of my job, not kind of, I don't know why I say kind of sometimes, but that is my job and my brother's full-time job. And that's like our main source of income, right? So once you get 3 strikes, you can't upload. And also, if you lose like the strikes, if you actually don't fight it and you don't win when you fight it, which we fought and we won luckily, but you can lose your whole channel. So that was a very a situation that could be associated with a lot of stress. And I know my brother was worrying about it, which is normal. And then I was also in my own way dealing with it. And one of the ways I found myself dealing with it was I went, instead of working on a script, because, if I worked on a script, I might not even get to ever publish it because we weren't allowed to publish and we could have lost the channel because YouTube, it has the power in that relationship. So what I did when I didn't know what would happen with the future of the channel is I opened up the journal and I started writing down, okay, working through it, what would happen if, yes, I lost the channel, we lost all like that work we put in, we lost all those 625,000 subscribers. Obviously, it wouldn't be a preferable thing. Obviously, I wouldn't want it to happen, but I worked through it and realized, okay, well, we've already made, like a solid experience out of it. We did save up money, so we're in a good situation in that way. And we could still keep trying with other businesses. We could still make anime content on different platforms. There is still a variety of things I could do aside from just complaining about it, right? So I made my peace with it and I felt a lot better. And that's what I said, like throughout my life, I found myself in difficult times turning to writing in my journal, and it's always helped me. So I think, like, really, when it comes to that negative visualization, when you're really worried about something, it really helps you work through that stuff. Another thing it can really help you with, and like Ryan said, not everything here you need to implement. We're just giving you some examples of different stuff we do, but you can see what works for you, experiment, discard what doesn't, use what does. But another thing I do is I put my goals in journals, which is amazingly effective. I don't do this every day. I'm not every day like, oh, my goal is this, my goal is this. But in the long term, I do put my goals in there. And it's surprising because you think it wouldn't matter. But I've actually found like 5 years ago, I was like, one of my goals was to finish my master's. I did that. Another one of my goals was to travel. And I had a Euro trip, so I did that. And another one of my goals was to actually do something where I could make money from anywhere. And that could either be, I put down like writing or YouTube. And now I literally write scripts and then record them on YouTube, and that's my full-time job. So it's funny because I forgot that was even a goal that I had at the time, because YouTube was nowhere near like at that level. I had maybe like 100 subscribers or something, and I was just doing random stuff, didn't even think about the money. But it's interesting that just writing that down, I found myself coming back to it, and that actually became a thing. So once you really put those goals down, if you revisit them every so often, I think it'll even help. And then you can really find your mind focusing on ways to get to that goal. And I did that last year. I put down a bunch of goals, including run a half marathon, make a certain amount of money, get a certain amount of followers, 500,000 on YouTube. And I accomplished every single one of those like 5 or 6 goals. So goal setting, I think, is huge. Obviously, always realize that you should have a part of it, which is like, God willing, or if fate allows, like don't get devastated if you don't accomplish your goals. But it's so powerful actually writing them down so you know what to work towards, rather than being like a leaf in the wind and wasting your time on stuff that you don't really care about.
And writing your goals down are important because so often we need repetition in our life to remember what's important to us. So if we have goals on our wall and maybe we avoid our room, or we don't go into our room for a couple days, or it's not in sight every moment of the day, we lose track of those goals. So being able to write down our goals, whether it be on a weekly or daily basis, even if they're similar or the same goals, will go a long way for us to remember what's important in life.
Yeah, we had a presentation at Brock University at the beginning of the week for 2 classes, and it went really awesome. And it was like a great experience. But why I bring that up is that Ryan brought up something cool, which was a lot of this stuff is common sense, right? Like it's been proven scientifically, the benefits. And it makes sense that, you write something down, you can get a more rational distance view of it, and it will help you out. But even though it's common sense, we still need to be reminded of this stuff because we fall into autopilot. We get busy with work. We get all this stuff happening. And then all of a sudden we find ourselves after a hard day of work. Oh, I come home, I turn on the TV, I grab a drink, and I don't think about this stuff. But if we bring common sense in, if we remind ourselves, if we practice every day or close to every day, then all of a sudden we're actually going to live by these common sense principles. While if we don't remind ourselves, then we will easily forget about it, even though, yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense that it's better to work on your essay than watch TV. But how many people practice that without procrastinating at all, right? It's all about actually holding yourself accountable. And the way to do that is to one way to do that is to keep a journal, because like I said, before, when I was in school, I procrastinate days of just reading. I used reading as a procrastination and not start writing my essays. And if I was holding myself accountable every day, then I would be like, every day have to face myself. Did you write today? You know you wanted to write today. And then if I had to accept that and not run away from it by doing other stuff, then all of a sudden the next day, it would be much harder to keep procrastinating, because I know again tonight I'm going to have to deal with myself. I'm going to have to hold myself accountable. So that's one of the big changes I've noticed. And since that, I've been able to, write over a year. I've been journaling. I've been able to exercise consistently. And it's been wonderful for the business and for other areas of my life too. So I really think a large part of that is just holding myself accountable, and journaling is a great way to do that.
So we'd really love to hear from you down below in the comment section. You could talk about whether you journal, what are some of the practices that you implement in your journaling, and how journaling has changed your life, because it certainly has for us, for the better. And we'd love to hear some of the stuff that you do so we could possibly incorporate it into our own journaling.
Definitely. And one of my main goals for last year was to fill out like a complete journal, because I kept starting them and then not finishing them all the way through. And I did that. I accomplished that. So that was like a huge thing for me. And now this is like the second journal that I'm totally almost close to completely filling out, which is awesome. And I want to tell you guys too, if you're watching this and you like it, subscribe and hit that like button if you enjoy the video. It means a lot. Share it with your friends. And I will also say that we have a workshop that will link in the description happening in March 7th. So it would be awesome if you could come out to that. That's it from us this time. We're going to be trying to upload at least, that's one of our goals for both of us, right?
Yes.
That to upload at least once a week on this channel. So look for that, and maybe more than once a week. Thanks again so much. We've come a long way. We've been doing this a year, and we really want to take it even more seriously this year. So until next time, see ya.